Hey, my name is Moltanan, and welcome to Making It Look Great number 5. In this video we're going to cover doing slideshows. Nah, I'm just kidding. Slideshows are pretty boring and we all know it, but I'm going to use a slideshow to demonstrate the idea behind the technique I'm going to show you. And I'm going to go through making a slideshow very quickly, so if you're new to slideshows, make sure to check out my free tutorial on moltanan.com. Okay, so let me just select all the layers, trim them like that, and go to Keyframe Assistant, Sequence Layers. You don't see it, but it's here. And I'm going to say, do not overlap. Let's say that we want to add a little bit of movement. For example, a little bit of scaling to the photos. And normally we would do it like this. We can go ahead and open up Scale and make a keyframe here and maybe add a keyframe here, set it to 90% and add a nice ease out. And then we just have to basically copy those keyframes here and here and here and here. Of course, let me just delete all that I've just did. Of course, we can just move all the layers here. And while we have them selected, just paste those keyframes to all the layers and then sequence them again. And this, of course, is a good technique. As you can see, nothing happens, because for some reason I don't have the keyframes copied. Okay, I just made a fool of myself. Let me try it again. Scale 100%, 90%, ease out, select copy, move to the beginning and select all the layers and paste it. Do we have the keyframes? Yes, we do. Okay, so now we go to Keyframe Assistant, Sequence Layers, do not overlap. Okay. And as you can see, it all works pretty well. But let's say that you want to add a little bit more to this, a little bit more depth by applying some effects. For example, blurring the images or making them overexposed or whatever, basically. It is a pretty time-consuming process because you have to do all that stuff again. Move those layers here, add another effect, copy the keyframes, paste the keyframes. And if you want to change something a little bit, for example, timing of each effect, you have to do it for one layer and then just, repeat the whole process. Move the layers, copy the keyframes, paste the keyframes, Keyframe Assistant. It's just a nightmare. So I figured out a way to do this faster and much better. You only need one set of keyframes, and then I don't want to spoil it. Let me just show you. Let's get rid of all those keyframes here, like that. You can just twirl it down. Let's go ahead and create a new adjustment layer. Now this looks interesting, but what am I going to do? Am I going to paste those keyframes on, when each layer starts? No. I'm going to measure the duration of one slide, and please note that all slides have the same duration, and it's 35 frames. Keeping that in mind, all you have to do is repeat the keyframes that you create every 35 frames, right? Actually, every 36 frames, because on 36th frame is when the new layer starts to be displayed or playback or whatever you want to call it. So let's create a simple expression to do that. But first, we of course need to scale the layers down, right? So to do that, we're going to use the transform. And we've got a scale slider here, works pretty much the same. And it affects all the layers beneath, right? Because this is an adjustment layer. So let's just go ahead and set the keyframes to 100. Create a keyframe, go here, set it to 90%, reveal modify properties, easy ease, and okay, that's pretty good. So now we need to create an expression. So let's alt click here, and I'm not going to paste this expression in. It is pretty simple, and it is crucial that you understand how it works, because then you can easily, just by changing one simple line in this expression, you can change the way it behaves and create all sorts of interesting effects that will, in the end, save you an enormous amount of time. Not only doing slideshows, remember, this tutorial is called SpyCam, so we're moving to that soon. Okay, first, it's easier to work with frames, so let's just take the current time and figure out which frame it is. Actually, each comp has a frame duration property. So if we divide time by the frame duration, we're going to get a current frame, right? Because in other words, this means how many frame durations fit in current time. So on the first frame, which is 0 seconds, it fits 0 times, right? And that gives us frame number 0. On the first frame, the time is equal to the frame duration, right? So when we divide frame duration by frame duration, it gives us 1. And on the second frame, frame duration fits in current time twice, and so on and so forth. So let's just type in this comp frame duration. And we want to save it as a variable so we can refer to it later. So let's call this frame equals. And of course, there is an expression built in this flyout menu that is called time to frames, but I actually prefer using this. It's much shorter, simpler, and it also works. So why shouldn't we use it, right? Okay, the second thing is we need to somehow calculate the time offset. So in other words, after how much time do we need to repeat the keyframes? So let's create a new variable called time offset. And this might be a little bit tricky, but I'm sure we can understand it. We need to take the frame, so current frame, and divide it by the length of our slide. So in our case, it's 35, if I remember correctly. But remember, I said that we need to set it to 36, because this is when the keyframes should start repeating. So we have that, but this value, if you would leave it like this, check out how the slider looks. After 36 frames, it gives us 1, and that's good. And here it should give us 0, that's also good. But in between, it should still give us 0. So we can do that by saying math floor. And that basically rounds this number, the product of this division, down. Oh, I know I'm getting too much into math. John told me not to do it, but I really want you to understand this.
Whoa, Moltenon, slow down, stop it, cut the crap. The point of this expression is to calculate how far back we need to look for the keyframes, right? Right. So if we know the duration of the slide, and we know that all slides have the same duration, which is 35 frames in this case, and we know which slide is currently displayed from the time offset value, we just need to look that many slides back in time because all of the keyframes are placed during the first slide. Is that clear? I hope so. I've just saved you 20 minutes of your life, so you'll thank me later.
Right. Well, that was exactly what I was about to say. Okay, so having that done, we can just twiddle it down. And again, use the keyframe assistant, sequence layers, do not overlap, and check this out. Pretty cool, huh? And we can also improve this just a little bit, really just a little bit. Let me just go ahead and press U so we can see the modified properties. And instead of using 36 in here, we can actually refer to the length of this layer. Because all the layers have the same length, we can refer to the first one. So let's just go ahead and create a new variable called layer length equals this layer dot duration. And remember, this will give us 35, and we need to add 1 to this, like I said, right? So let's do it like this, and then simply replace 36 with this value. I hope this will work. I didn't try it out. Doesn't work. Layer does not have a property duration. So let's just see what else we have to work with. We've got in point and out point, and those values are presented in seconds. That's important to remember. So we could subtract out point from the in point, and that would give us the duration. But since the first layer starts at the beginning of the comp, we only need to use the out point. So let's just go ahead and change this to out point. get rid of this for a second. And remember, this is in seconds. So we need to take this value and modify it so that we have it in frames. So we can basically do the same thing we did in here. So let's just divide it by this comp frame duration. Okay, looks great. Okay guys, now's the time to take a deep breath, get a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, think this through once again, because we're going to move forward. I'm not going to go through the expressions from this point on, but it is crucial that you understand this. Okay, done? Okay, so we can change this a little bit. We can still take the same expression. We don't need to modify anything. I'm just going to cut it and get rid of those two keyframes. And let's say that I want to have several effects applied to create the transition. And let's make another one. Let's call this one blur, for example. Blur, fast blur, or box blur, or whatever. Fast blur. Okay. Repeat edge pixels, and note that I've deleted the keyframes here, and I did that for a reason, because we could paste that expression to all the parameters that we want to change and create keyframes for those, but that would basically defeat the purpose, right? Because each time you would want to change something or add another effect, you have to paste the same expression in, and this is very similar to just applying the effects to all the layers like I explained in the beginning, right? So pretty pointless. So instead, we can create a new slider. Let's just call it master. And we can create keyframes for the master in here. And let's just make it go from 100 to 0. Okay? And we want to paste the expression here, and then we can link all the effects that we want to this slider, making necessary adjustments, right, depending on the effect to apply and the parameters that it takes. So for example, for the transform scale, we could go ahead and just pick with this slider, and remember it goes from 100 to 0, and we want it to go from 100 to 90, for example. And there is a very nice expression that we can use, and I've covered it a lot in my free tutorials, and it's called linear. So to use it, we can change this expression to a variable, master, so we can refer it later, and we type in linear master. Okay, and the master changes from 100 to 0. And we want to make it go from 100 to 90. This should work. No, it doesn't. Oh yeah, we probably need to switch those two. Okay, yeah. And very good. I always get confused when the ranges are kind of reversed. That's pretty simple to fix. Okay, that works. So let's just go ahead and do the same for our blur. We can just copy this expression and paste it in here. But instead, the final value of the blur should be 0, and the starting value should be, what, 10 maybe? Okay, let's see. Ah, very nice. Very nice indeed. So you already see the power behind this technique. The only downside is that all the keyframes that are driven from this expression, which is based on the keyframes in the slider, they are synchronized. Unless you change the expression to something really fancy, they're all going to be synchronized. Also, in my opinion, the downside to this technique is that it is based on the time of the layer. So if you would like one layer or a certain amount of layers to be longer, shorter, or whatever, this wouldn't actually work. But still, it is a pretty cool technique. But I'm not going to let you rest. This is not the end. we are going to fix it and we are going to make this expression work time independent. So I hope you've got this idea, because it is really important that you do. And let's just go ahead, my SpyCam comp, which I prepared earlier. This is just a bunch of layers. As you can see, these are photos zooming in on a character. This is my good friend Dominic, who you probably know from my online tutorials, my free tutorials. But shh, let's just pretend he's a secret agent. Or a fugitive that we're spying on with our SpyCam. Well, he doesn't actually look like any of those, but like I said, let's pretend he does. Okay, so first thing, let's just treat the footage a little bit. So we're going to create a new adjustment layer, and maybe let's turn it black and white, so tint, like that. Maybe some curves, and add a nice contrast curve here. Maybe it should be a little bit brighter. Yeah, I think that's better. And maybe let's maybe let's change this color to bluish. Okay, yeah. And add a fair amount of noise. Without color, yeah. Something like that. Haha, looks cool. And let's simulate some lenses. So optic compensation, and diagonal, and reverse lens distortion. That's right. And let's do it like that. Very nice. Oh, maybe actually we should do it the other way. Hard to say. I'll let you decide. And the last step is to add some scan lines, I think. Scan lines always look good. Here we go. 90 degrees. And width, maybe let's make it a little bit smaller, 10. Okay, that's better. And feather them out like 2 points or so. Okay, looks good. Let's just see a close-up. Oh, that's too much. Let's maybe feather it out like 5. Oh yeah, that's actually better. Yeah, and we need to put the blinds before the optics compensation. And that way we also get the bend on them. Okay, that's pretty cool. So let's say that we like this look. Well, I actually like it. So we don't need to pretend that we do. And yeah, let's get down to business. Let's just make this work. So let's call this color correction or whatever. We need to create another adjustment layer. Call this transition, and this is when the fun starts. We are going to do something very similar to what we did in a slideshow, but there are going to be two differences. First, we're going to have each effect keyframed by hand, and then the keyframes will be repeated automatically. And the second change is that they will be repeated automatically based not on the layer duration, but on the actual time when the layer appears. And that's cool. So first we need to define which layers interest us the most as the ones that we want to apply the transition to. So we can refer to the layer numbers in here. So let me just go ahead and create a point controller. This doesn't make any sense. Point controller, layers, numbers, what the heck? But it actually makes perfect sense. I'm going to name this layer range. And we're going to use those two numbers to define the range of the layers that we want to apply the transition to. So in our case, it will be from number 3 to number 13. Okay, makes sense. I only use the point so that we can save a little bit of space in the effects palette. Because using we could use 2 sliders, but that's just a terrible waste of space. So that's the first thing. And as you remember from the slideshow, we based repeating of the keyframes on the duration of the layer. And here we're going to base it on the endpoint of a given layer. So as promised, I'm not going to type this expression in because this tutorial is already taking too long. And I promised you in the previous one that this one is going to be simple and short. Sorry, guys. Okay, so the other thing we need to do is we need to create one slider similar to the master slider that we did. And let's call this master time, maybe. This will make sense in a second. Okay, so let's just go ahead and apply an expression to our master time. And I got the expression already in my clipboard, so I'm just going to paste it in. And let's just go through it very quickly. We are having a loop here, which is the key in this, which basically checks all the layers within the range and then checks which endpoint of which layer is the closest to our time indicator. And then we're choosing that layer's endpoint to calculate the time offset. Ta-da! Okay. So right now all the layers start at the same time and have the same length. So let's just modify this a little bit. Let's just do it like that, for example, and we can make this one shorter, this one shorter. Let's make this one a little bit longer, shorter, and so on and so forth. Basically a little bit randomization in here, and you will see that this will work anyway. Okay, now we can just go ahead and sequence the layers just like we did before, without overlapping. Okay, that's cool. Whoa, we have a too short comp. We can go ahead and just extend it. What, like 40 seconds will do, I guess. Yeah, it works, so we can just trim it like that. Okay, and now watch how this value will change. We are scrubbing through the timeline, and the value is basically equal to the current time because we are at the first layer. But when we reach the second layer, it's going to be resetted, go back to 0 and start counting again. And this is the whole power behind this technique. Let's just go ahead and extend this and this. Okay. And now we can start applying effects to our transition. So let's just go ahead and make a mosaic. Mosaic, sharp colors. And let's go ahead and create 2 keyframes here and make this like 1 and 1. And let's just go a little bit further in time and set it to 300 by 300. And that should give us a pretty nice look. Okay, it looks like the mosaic is not there. Let's just go ahead and add a little easy ease curve. And we can also desynchronize those keyframes, like we're only adjusting the vertical blocks at the beginning and then the horizontal blocks. Pretty cool, right? So we have full freedom, full control over how this looks. That is pretty nice. Let me just zoom in. Okay, nice. And now when we go further, nothing is going to happen. Why? Because we haven't applied any expression to those parameters. But the expression that we need to apply is very, very simple. It's just as simple as pick whipping. We only need to put the value at time and then refer to this slider, like so. And we can just take this expression, copy it, and paste it to all parameters that we're interested in. See, we've reached this layer and now the keyframes are being repeated. Very nice. And it's the same in here and the same in here. And we don't even have to do it like that all the time. We can like add one effect that will have keyframes of its own that are not controlled by this slider. That is pretty powerful and very cool technique. Let's just go ahead and add a wave warp like that. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to recreate the effect that we created in the retro terminal tutorial. So let's just go ahead and do that. I think I remember what it was. This was set to 0, this was set to noise. Width, I think we can set it to a low number like 10. And the height, if we set it to 0, yeah, we got no distortion at all. So we can randomize this value, and this will be different all across this transition. So it's not actually controlled by the master time slider, like I said. So let's just go ahead and create an expression, r equals random. So we're generating a random number in the range of 0 to 20. And then we are checking if this random value is greater or equal 19, then we want to set the distortion to 30, and in any other case we want to set it to 0. And that should work just fine. I'll just go ahead, maximize this, and see how it looks. Okay, this does look pretty cool. I really like it. I really like it. But I think that we can make some further adjustments just to, play around. The whole thing that I just showed you basically covers the tutorial, but it's so fun working with this that I want to spend a little bit more time. Let's just go ahead to the mosaic, and I think that we have too much of those horizontal lines in here. Let's just leave it at like 1, 2, 3 frames, and then just go ahead and change this parameter. Okay, like that. Maybe just move this a little bit further. That's cool. Maybe we should also add a little bit of glow or something. Let's just go ahead and add glow so that we can blow up the image. Glow. Okay, here we are. And yeah, let's just put the threshold down like so. Yeah, maybe even 0. Okay, yeah, we can create a keyframe here. Let's just turn it off for a sec and see where the keyframes could go. Okay, it could go in here. So let's set it to 20. And let's put a keyframe here, and then move it here and set it to 100, so it doesn't affect that much of the footage. And also we want to set the glow radius to a smaller number, or sorry, glow intensity. So we can just create a keyframe here, move a few frames forward, and basically just turn off the glow. So set the glow intensity to 0. Okay, and the only thing left to do is to take this expression, one line expression, and just paste it in those two parameters, like that and like that, and we're all good to go. Let's just see how that looks. Okay, that's not bad, but I think that we can make the layers a little bit shorter. Isn't this fun? You've got full creative control over this. Nothing is limiting you in any way. You can now just take the layers, trim them down, extend them, do whatever you like with them, and it's all going to work just perfectly. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording it. I'm just going to play with this a little bit longer because it's so much fun. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. See you in the next tutorial. Happy After Effecting.